The laughter was not loud. That was what made it hurt the most. Nathan's father sat at the end of the long table. He slowly moved his glass in his hand and looked at me with a cold smile. "Girls like her don't marry because they love someone," he said. "They marry because they want an easy life." A few people laughed softly. Some people looked away because they felt uncomfortable. Others kept eating as if nothing had happened. I sat very still. My hands were resting in my lap. I squeezed them so hard that my fingernails pressed into my skin. I had not touched my food. Then Nathan leaned forward with a proud grin. "She went from poverty to pearls in just a few weeks," he joked. "Not bad, right?" More laughter filled the room. This time it felt even worse. The sound seemed to stay inside my chest. It felt heavy and painful. Even Nathan's mother smiled. She acted as if everyone was just having fun. As if I should laugh too. As if I should feel lucky to be sitting there among rich people, expensive dishes, crystal glasses, and beautiful decorations. But I did not feel lucky. I felt small. I felt tired. And I felt deeply hurt. My throat burned. Not because I was ashamed. Because I was holding back my anger. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them how cruel they were being. I wanted to throw my drink at Nathan's father. I wanted to slap the smile off Nathan's face. But I did none of those things. Instead, I stood up slowly. I straightened my dress. Then I took the engagement ring off my finger. Carefully, I placed it on Nathan's plate. The room became silent. Someone gasped. Someone dropped a fork. People whispered to each other. But I did not stop. I turned around and walked away. I did not cry. I did not yell. I did not explain myself. I simply walked out. The sound of my heels echoed across the marble floor. With every step, I felt lighter. I left behind the ring. I left behind the insults. And I left behind the people who never truly respected me. I never looked back. I already knew what they looked like. Shocked. Confused. Embarrassed. They could not believe I had walked away. They thought I would stay. They thought I would accept their treatment forever. They were wrong. My name is Maria Caldwell. And that night changed my life. The night they laughed at me became the night I chose myself. People would tell stories afterward. Some would call me a gold digger. Some would say I could not take a joke. Others would make up lies about why I left. But none of that mattered. Because I knew the truth. And one day everyone else would know it too. I did not grow up with money. My mother worked as a seamstress. She spent long days sewing clothes for other people. Her hands were always busy. She was kind, loving, and hardworking. We lived in a tiny apartment above a nail salon. The apartment was old. The wallpaper peeled away from the walls. The refrigerator barely worked. Sometimes we had to push the door hard just to make it close. But even though our home was small, it was filled with love. My mother always made sure I knew I was important. She taught me that money was not everything. She taught me that hard work mattered. She taught me to be proud of who I was. Growing up was not easy. Sometimes the neighbors argued loudly through the walls. Sometimes we worried about bills. Sometimes we had very little. But I never stopped dreaming. At night, I studied under my blanket with a flashlight. I worked hard in school. I applied for every scholarship I could find. On weekends, I worked small jobs to earn extra money. Every acceptance letter I received was precious. I folded each one carefully and placed it inside an old shoebox under my bed. That box was special. It reminded me that I was moving forward. It reminded me that hard work was opening doors. It reminded me that my future could be different. Years later, I met Nathan. Nathan came from a completely different world. His family was wealthy. They lived in beautiful homes. They attended fancy events. They never worried about paying rent. They never worried about grocery bills. Their lives seemed perfect. We met at a company gala. I was there because I had earned a fellowship opportunity. Getting that opportunity had taken years of effort. I almost did not get selected. Nathan was there representing his father's business. He looked confident and comfortable. He belonged in that world. At first, I thought he would ignore me. Instead, he came over and started talking. He asked questions about my work. He complimented my intelligence. He said I had interesting eyes. I rolled my eyes at him. He laughed. For some reason, he liked that I was not impressed by his money. Soon he began pursuing me. Flowers arrived at my workplace. Coffee appeared at my desk. He invited me to expensive restaurants. Places I had never heard of before. He told me he admired my determination. He said I was refreshed. Slowly, I began to trust him. My mother was worried. "Be careful," she warned me. "Men like him don't always love women like us. Sometimes they only collect us like trophies." I thought she was being unfair. I thought she was judging him too quickly. But later, I realized she had seen something I could not. At first, Nathan seemed kind. But little things began to bother me. He often made jokes about my background. He would smile while saying things that hurt. One day he said, "You're not like other girls from your neighborhood." He thought it sounded like a compliment, but it didn't feel like one. Another time he joked that he had rescued me from a life of noodles and roommates. I laughed because I did not want to cause problems. But deep down, I felt uncomfortable. Then things got worse. Nathan's mother invited me to brunch. She brought out a bag of old jewelry. With a sweet smile, she said, "These should help you look the part." I knew what she meant. She thought I wasn't good enough. She thought I needed fixing. On another day, Nathan's father looked directly at me and asked, "What's your real plan?" "Marry Nathan and take the family money." The question hurt, but I stayed calm. I smiled politely. Inside, I felt crushed. I kept hoping Nathan would defend me. I kept hoping he would tell his family to stop. But he never did. He always stayed quiet. Or worse, he laughed along. The truth was painful. Nathan liked the idea of me. He liked telling people about the hardworking girl who came from nothing. It made him look generous. It made him look kind. But he did not truly respect me. He did not see me as an equal. He saw me as someone who should feel grateful for his attention. One evening, we sat at a rooftop restaurant. I told him a story about high school. I explained how I used to make handmade bracelets and sell them to help my mother pay rent. Instead of admiring my hard work, he laughed. "That's adorable," he said. "Like a charity case with ambition." Then he kissed my cheek, as if he had just said something sweet. I smiled, but inside something broke. I started noticing everything. Every joke. Every insult hidden inside a compliment. Every moment he made my achievements seem small. When I talked about my goals, he called them cute. When I shared my ideas, he called them adorable. When I succeeded, he acted like it was a hobby. Slowly, my confidence began disappearing. I started doubting myself. I started shrinking. I stopped speaking as boldly as before. The strong girl I used to be was still inside me. But she was hiding. Then came the biggest warning sign. One Sunday, Nathan's father placed a legal document on the table. It was a prenuptial agreement. A contract about money before marriage. The strange thing was that Nathan had not even officially proposed yet. His father smiled and said, "We need to protect the family assets." I looked at Nathan. I expected him to speak up. I expected him to defend me. Instead, he shrugged. "It's normal," he said. "It's not a big deal." My feelings were never a big deal to him. When relatives insulted me, it was not a big deal. When his mother criticized me, it was not a big deal. When people questioned my intentions, it was not a big deal. But it was a big deal to me. Every comment left a scar. Every insult hurts. And little by little, I lost pieces of myself. Then one night everything changed. I stayed awake until 3 a.m. working on my consulting business. I looked through reports and client information. Something amazing had happened. My business was growing quickly. New clients were signing up. People were recommending my services. Success was coming faster than I expected. Then I opened an email from one of my clients. She had recently achieved a major business goal after working with me. Her message said, "You don't just teach business strategies. You help people believe in themselves." I read the message several times. Then I sat quietly. And suddenly I understood something. I had spent years trying to fit into Nathan's world. Trying to earn approval from people who would never respect me. Trying to become someone they would accept. Meanwhile, I had been building something incredible. My own business. My own future. My own success. I did not need their approval. I never had. That realization changed everything. I made a plan. Not a plan for revenge. A plan for freedom. I quietly separated my finances. I removed my name from shared accounts. I moved important business conversations to private contacts. I prepared for a future without Nathan. Then, 1 week before the engagement dinner, I received a life-changing phone call. A private investment company wanted to invest in my business. They offered 7 figures. More money than I had ever imagined. For a moment, I could not speak. Tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money. Because of what it represented. Every sacrifice. Every late night. Every rejection. Every struggle. Every moment someone doubted me. It had all been worth it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. I was no longer the poor girl people pitied. I was no longer Nathan's project. I was no longer someone's charity case. I was a successful business owner. I was strong. I was capable. And nobody could take that away from me. That engagement dinner was supposed to be Nathan's family's big celebration. They thought it would be their perfect night. They thought everything was going according to their plan. But they had no idea what was coming. I did not want revenge. I did not want drama. I did not want to embarrass anyone. I simply wanted my life back. And when I placed that ring on Nathan's plate and walked away, I was not running from something. I was walking toward something better. I was walking toward freedom. I was walking toward respect. Most importantly, I was walking toward the person I had always been meant to become. And that was only the beginning of my story. By the time Nathan's family booked the big hall for the engagement dinner, I had already started making plans for my future. I quietly opened a new business bank account that belonged only to me. Then I moved all the money from a very important business deal into that account. I did everything carefully and privately. I did not tell anyone. I did not make any social media posts. I did not celebrate. I simply kept working and building my future. I also changed the passwords to all of my business accounts. For safety, I removed Nathan's access to them. He never noticed. He usually paid attention only to things that helped him. For a long time, Nathan liked showing me off at parties and family events. He liked people seeing me beside him, but he never treated me like an equal partner. He never truly respected all the hard work I had done. I stayed quiet because I learned something important. Sometimes people show their true feelings when they think they are more powerful than you. I started saving copies of every business paper, agreement, and invoice in a private folder. I wanted everything I worked for to be protected. I wanted my success to belong to me, not to Nathan, not to his family, and not to anyone else's approval. Even the way I dressed started changing. I stopped wearing the clothes and handbags Nathan's mother had given me. Whenever I wore them, they seemed to send a message that said, "You should be thankful we accepted you." I did not want to wear that message anymore. Instead, I returned to my own style. I wore clothes that made me feel strong and confident, clothes that reminded me of who I really was. Every choice I made was careful. Every step had a purpose. Because true strength is often quiet. The final part of my plan was creating a new place for myself. I rented a beautiful office in a tall building downtown. The office had large windows and a wonderful view of the city. I paid 6 months of rent in advance because I believed in my future. Then I hired an assistant. She was a hardworking single mother who reminded me of my own mom. She was kind, strong, and determined. I knew she would be a wonderful part of the team. A few days later, I ordered a silver sign for my office door. When it arrived, I smiled. The sign read, Maria Caldwell, CEO, Caldwell & Bloom Consulting. The silver letters shined brightly. Looking at that sign made me proud. Everything it represented had been earned through hard work. Nobody had handed it to me. Nobody had built it for me. I had built it myself. One evening, Nathan asked me about the engagement dinner. "Are you excited?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Very excited," I replied. He smiled and kissed my forehead. He acted as though I needed him to succeed. He believed I was simply following him into a better future. I let him believe that. What he did not know was that my future was already growing stronger without him. Around that same time, Nathan's newest business project began having problems. Several investors decided not to support his idea anymore. One of those investors decided to support my company instead. Nathan had no idea. He did not know that my work and my ideas had impressed people. He did not know that important business leaders were talking about me. While all of this was happening, Nathan was busy choosing decorations, music, and food for the engagement dinner. The night before the event, I watched him stand in front of a mirror. He was practicing his speech. With a big smile, he said, "Maria is proof that love can help someone become successful." I almost laughed. Love did not build my business. Love did not help me work late nights. Love did not help me work late nights. Love did not solve difficult problems. Love did not help me survive hard times. I did those things myself. Still, I stayed quiet. I listened while he practiced. I let him believe his own story. Because sometimes the truth becomes more powerful when people discover it on their own. The next evening arrived. The engagement dinner was held in a beautiful hall filled with gold decorations. Golden chairs surrounded golden tables. Flowers sparkled under bright lights. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked perfect. At least from the outside. I arrived alone. I did not bring a guest. I walked through the doors wearing a simple black dress and elegant heels. People immediately turned to look at me. Something about me was different. I stood taller. I smiled more confidently. For the first time in a long time, I did not look like someone waiting for approval. I looked like someone who already knew her worth. Nathan walked over to greet me. "Wow," he said. "You clean up nicely." I smiled politely. "I'm not here to be cleaned up." He laughed. He thought I was making a joke. But I wasn't. Nathan's mother soon walked over. She greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you wore something simple. We wouldn't want you to outshine the family." I simply smiled. There was no reason to argue. The truth would speak for itself soon enough. I took my seat at the table. After dinner began, the speeches started. Nathan's cousin stood up first. He told funny stories about Nathan as a child. Everyone laughed. Then Nathan's father stood up holding a glass of champagne. The room became quiet. He smiled proudly and began speaking. "We are so happy to welcome Maria into our family." Everyone nodded. Then he continued. "She reminds us that with the right support, anyone can succeed." Some people laughed softly. I stayed quiet. Then he added something else. "Girls like Maria know how to improve their lives." He turned toward Nathan. "Isn't that right, son?" Nathan smiled. "She upgraded pretty fast," he replied. The room filled with laughter. The words hurt. But what hurt even more was seeing Nathan laugh along with everyone else. He knew those comments were unfair. Yet he said nothing. In fact, he joined in. At that moment, something became very clear. I was never truly respected at that table. Not by his family. Not by him. And I was finally ready to leave it all behind. I stood up calmly. I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not make a scene. I simply reached for my engagement ring. Slowly, I slipped it off my finger. Then I placed it carefully on the table in front of Nathan. The sound was small, but in the silent room it seemed very loud. Everyone stared. No one knew what to say. I looked at Nathan's father. "Thank you for your generosity," I said calmly. "Thank you for helping me see things clearly." Then I turned toward Nathan. He looked shocked, confused, as though he had forgotten the next part of a script. "I was never yours," I said quietly. "You only confused my kindness with gratitude." The room stayed silent. I looked around at every face, every smile, every person who had judged me. Then I lifted my head. "This dinner did not expose me," I said. "It exposed all of you." When I finished speaking, I turned around and walked toward the door. My heels clicked softly against the floor. No tears fell. No anger showed. Only confidence. As I reached the exit, something unexpected happened. A woman began clapping. Just one woman. I did not know who she was. Maybe she was someone's guest. Maybe she had once faced something similar. Maybe she simply understood. But her applause echoed through the room. And somehow, it felt louder than all the laughter before it. Outside, I stopped and took a deep breath. The city lights shone around me. Cars moved through the streets. People continued their lives. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. I had not just left dinner. I had left behind a story that others had written about me. And now I was ready to write my own. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message. One of Nathan's friends had texted me. "What happened last night?" he asked. "The internet is talking about it." I was surprised. I had not posted anything. Then I learned what happened. Someone at the dinner had recorded the entire moment. They recorded the speeches. They recorded Nathan's smile. They recorded me placing the ring on the table. By morning, hundreds of thousands of people had watched the video. By afternoon, even more people were sharing it. People everywhere were talking about what happened. Many women began sharing their own stories online. Stories about standing up for themselves. Stories about leaving situations where they were treated unfairly. Some people even repeated my words. "You confused my kindness with gratitude." This dinner did not expose me. It exposed all of you. Meanwhile, Nathan tried to defend himself. He posted a photo online. Under it he wrote, "Sometimes people can't handle real love." The comments appeared almost immediately. Many people disagreed with him. They wrote things like, "Real love does not laugh when someone is being insulted. She deserved better. You should stop posting." The criticism continued growing. At the same time, people started learning more about me. An article was published about my company and my work. For years, many people had only known me as Nathan's girlfriend. Now they were learning the truth. They learned that I had built a successful business. They learned about my achievements. They learned about my plans to help women start companies in communities that needed more opportunities. They learned about my dreams and goals. Most importantly, they learned that my success had come from hard work, determination, and belief in myself. Suddenly, I was no longer known as Nathan's ex-girlfriend. I was known as Maria Caldwell, a successful business owner, a strong leader, a woman who created her own future. And as I looked ahead toward everything still waiting for me, I smiled. Because my story was not ending. It was only just beginning. I was Maria Caldwell. I was a business owner, and I worked very hard for everything I had. After that terrible night, Nathan's world slowly started to fall apart. I heard from people that Nathan was trying to explain what happened. He told others that I was making a big problem out of a small joke. He said everyone should forget about it. But people did not forget. And neither did I. The internet kept talking about what happened. More and more people saw the video and read the stories. Many people were upset because they knew it was wrong to laugh at someone for being poor or for working hard to build a better life. Nathan's father also became very quiet. He stopped giving interviews. He stopped making public appearances. He was supposed to speak at a big business event, but the event was suddenly canceled. People were starting to see the truth. I did not call Nathan. I did not answer his messages. I did not read his emails. I simply kept moving forward with my life. I watched from far away as the perfect image they had created began to break apart. They had spent years acting like they were better than everyone else. Now people could finally see who they really were. I did not need to fight them. I did not need revenge. Their own actions were causing their problems. Meanwhile, my life was getting better every day. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a big women's finance conference. The organizers paid for my travel, my hotel, and everything else. They wanted me to tell my story. The title of my speech was Walking Away with Strength. The funny thing was that Nathan's father had originally been chosen to give that speech. Now they wanted me instead. When I stood on that stage, I looked out at hundreds of women. Some were young. Some were older. Some were just starting their businesses. Others had already built successful companies. All of them listened carefully. That was the moment I understood something important. This story was no longer about revenge. It was about change. For years, people wanted me to stay quiet. They wanted me to believe I was lucky just to be included. They wanted me to be small and grateful. But now I was standing on a stage, sharing my voice with the world. Nobody could control me anymore. And I was not finished yet. There is something special about being underestimated. Many people thought I was just a pretty face. Many people thought I got lucky. They thought success came easily to me. But they never saw the long nights. They never saw me working while everyone else was sleeping. They never saw me studying, planning, learning, and building. They never saw the tears, the worries, and the sacrifices. Now the truth was finally visible. The dreams they laughed at had become real. The ideas they ignored had become successful businesses. One morning, a famous magazine published a story about me. When the article came out, I was sitting at home wearing comfortable clothes and drinking a cup of instant coffee. I was not thinking about fame at all. The headline said, "She was called a gold digger. Now she helps others build their futures." The picture showed me speaking confidently on a stage. The article was not about Nathan. It was not about his father. It was about the people I was helping. It talked about the women I hired. It talked about the programs I created. It talked about how I turned pain into purpose. The article explained how I built a company that helped people who often felt ignored. I helped them find funding. I helped them start businesses. I helped them believe in themselves. The writer said something I would never forget. Maria Caldwell did not walk away from her future. She walked toward it. After that article, many more opportunities came my way. I started a scholarship fund named after my mother. The scholarship helped young women who wanted to study technology and computer science. Letters and applications arrived from all over the country. Every story touched my heart. Some students came from families with very little money. Others were the first people in their families to attend college. I wanted them to know that their dreams mattered. Soon after that, I gave another speech called "Silence is Not Weakness." The speech became very popular online. People shared it with friends and family. Many people wrote messages telling me that my words helped them feel stronger. Then I signed a deal to write a book. I was excited and nervous at the same time. The book would tell my story and share the lessons I had learned. One day, something surprising happened. 2 of Nathan's old investors contacted me. One of them said, "We made a mistake. We should have believed in you." Years ago, hearing those words would have meant everything to me. Now they did not. I simply smiled and replied politely. I no longer needed other people to tell me I was valuable. I already knew my worth. Then one day, I received an email from Nathan. The message was short. "Maria, I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. I am sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. There was a time when I would have answered right away. There was a time when I would have hoped for an apology. But I had changed. I no longer needed closure from him. His words could not change the past. And my future no longer depended on him. I quietly moved the email into a folder and continued with my day. Not because I was angry. Not because I hated him. But because I had already moved on. A few weeks later, a reporter asked me a question during an interview. "What would you say to women who are still sitting quietly while others put them down?" I thought carefully before answering. Then I said, "You do not have to stay where people make you feel small. If you need to leave, leave. But do not just walk away. Walk toward something better." The video spread across the internet. Millions of people watched it. Many shared it because they understood exactly what I meant. For the first time, I truly realized something. I was never meant to fit in at their table. I was meant to build my own table. A table with kindness. A table with respect. A table where everyone had a voice. One day, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a handwritten letter from Nathan. The letter said he was sorry. He said he had been afraid and confused. He said he wished he had treated me differently. I read the letter slowly. Then I folded it and placed it in a drawer. I did not throw it away. But I did not keep it close either. I had learned something important. Real healing does not come from someone else's apology. Real healing comes from believing in yourself. It comes from looking in the mirror and knowing your value. It comes from understanding that your worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion. Months later, I was invited to speak at a national leadership conference. The theme was From Pain to Purpose. I happily accepted. When the day arrived, I stood on stage in front of hundreds of people. I took a deep breath and began speaking. Once upon a time, people said I was not good enough. They said my dreams were too big. They said I came from nothing. But they forgot something important. I never needed gold. I only needed a chance. The room became silent. Then everyone stood and applauded. Some people even cried. After the speech, a woman came up to me. She held my hand tightly. "I ended a relationship last week," she whispered. "Your story gave me courage." At that moment, I understood that every painful thing I had experienced had meaning. The heartbreak, the embarrassment, the tears, the laughter that once hurt me. All of it helped me become who I was. When I returned home, I framed the magazine article and placed it beside my mother's old sewing machine. When my mother saw it, tears filled her eyes. She smiled and said, "You were always meant to shine." This time I believed her completely. Today there is a quote written on the wall behind my desk. It says, "She did not upgrade her life. She created it." That is the legacy I want to leave behind. Not revenge, not anger, not bitterness, but courage. The courage to believe in yourself. The courage to walk away from disrespect. The courage to build something better. They thought they broke me that night, but they were wrong.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है। अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना बहुत ही दर्द भरता है। मेरे साए भी मुझसे अब जुदा होने को कहते हैं। तुझे खोने की राहों में ये आंसू बहने लगते हैं। कहाँ जाऊं कहाँ ढूंढूं मेरा वो साजो सामा तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू। मेरी रूह का मका तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था। वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा। मगर खामोश है दुनिया कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत। मुझे है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर। दर्द का असर।